Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to the Elire Payments in the Cloud Treasury webinar for this afternoon. Thanks so much, everyone, for taking time to join out of your busy days, and hope everyone's having a great holidays. We did want to go through just a couple of points before we kick off. A couple of reminders. All attendees have been placed on mute for the duration of the presentation. We encourage you to ask questions of our presenters. If you do have questions, please submit them through the question portal, through the GoToWebinar tool, and we'll take time, about 5 minutes at the end, to help answer those questions as they come in. We also do have 3 poll questions today. We greatly appreciate everyone on the line engaging and interacting with the Elire team and answering those poll questions, and those will help us obviously get a better understanding of the types of individuals attending our webinars. And then last 2 points, a recording of this webinar will be sent out in the next couple of days, so you'll be able to distribute amongst others of your organization or listen back. And as a reminder, just in general, all of our past Elire webinars, as well as today's recording, can be found on the Elire YouTube channel and at elire.com. So with that, we'll get started with the Payments in the Cloud webinar. Today, as a reminder, this is one in a series of 5 webinars that we put on related to cloud cash management. Today is the 4th. We'll be talking primarily about the payments functionality. Our last webinar will be around the Smart View functionality and tool in the cloud cash management system. Previous webinars, topics obviously there, and again, those recordings are available for your consumption. Just a little high-level overview of the agenda today. Again, as a reminder, this is the 30-minute webinar format, so we'll look to get you some good information and have you get on with the rest of your day. We'll start with introductions from the Elire team, and then we'll hand it over to Logan Wacker as he highlights the cash management and accounts payable payments functionality, as well as some of the setup and configuration considerations when deploying the tool. And then finally, we'll talk just briefly about the methodology and some of the other services that Elire can offer in the space. My name is Kevin Schuster. I'm on the Business Development Management team with Elire. We've also got 2 other members of the Elire team joining today. The first is Michael Graham, who is our partner and Cloud Treasury Practice Lead. We also have Logan Wacker, who will be doing the presentation and doing much of the talking this afternoon. Logan, if you want to do a short introduction.
Hi, thanks, Kevin. As Kevin mentioned, my name's Logan Wacker. I'm one of the managing consultants under Michael Graham's Cloud Treasury Practice. I've been with Elire for a number of years, and I'll be your lead presenter today. Thanks, Kevin.
Perfect. Thanks, Logan. Just a short reminder for those who have been able to join webinars in the past. Thank you so much. For those that are new, Elire has been in business for 12 years, and we've been doing a lot of work within the treasury space and cash management space in particular. We are very proud of our over 200+ clients we've worked with over the last 12 years. And we're very proud of our Gold Partner Cloud Standard certification that we have in the Oracle Partner Network. We do offer both the knowledge and ability to help support your system implementations, but we also offer strategic guidance as well. So not only do we have the expertise when it comes to the software and the functionality within, but we have the business process knowledge to back it up. We understand that cash management and the treasury space in general is a bit more unique, and I think organizations can feel very confident in Elire's knowledge in that space. Just to highlight the fact that we do have expertise more generally in the cloud ERP and HCM space, and when it comes to that strategic guidance, that's housed underneath our strategic advisory services practice. So if your organization is really having a challenge of how to go about mapping its future and moving to the cloud from your on-premise solutions, or something as niche as trying to update and improve a very specific business process, you can look to Elire to help support those efforts. One last about Elire's slide. Certainly take a lot of pride in this one as well. Just a few of the logos of some of the organizations that we've been able to work with over the years. What this slide represents is the fact that Elire has lots of knowledge and expertise across various industries, whether you're in the public sector or higher ed space, all the way across to banking, financial services, insurance, utilities, manufacturing, and high tech, Elire has experience just about completely across the board. So with that, we'll start this. Before we get into the contact, we'll start with the first of 3 poll questions. So please, you should see it popped up now on your screen. The first question is, are you currently transmitting payment data electronically from an ERP application to your external bank partners? The answers are yes, no, currently using bank portals for that execution, or it's not applicable. Please do select one of those. So we've got a couple of folks that have answered already. Thank you so much. And still looks like people are answering. And we can go ahead and close it. So showing the results here, primarily folks electronically transmitting the data from your ERP application, which is great news. I think that gives a head start to this effort in the cloud. With that, Logan, if you want to kick off the first of the
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks.
So now that Kevin's introduced a little bit about Elire, who we are, and what we do, I want to talk about what Oracle delivers as far as payments functionality, both within core cash management and treasury, and also how most of the payments functionality in Oracle Cloud really sits over in payables module. So we want to start off the functional section of today's webinar by quickly reviewing cash management payments and then starting to understand and navigate the linkage between cash management payments and how those flow over to the payables module. So first and foremost, we want to talk about how can I access payments in the Oracle Cloud ERP application now. So once you go through single sign-on and you log into the application, you land on the first landing page filled with a series of tiles. That screen looks much like all of our iPhones do now, with a number of different tiles, a number of different applications, and links down to all of the sub-modules available within ERP. To get to most of the cash management items, you select the cash balances tile as highlighted here in the top middle of your page. And then here is the main landing page for cash balances. So here's where you can see all of your overall account definition, and you can see the balances that are reporting on a daily basis for all of your accounts. You have the ability to do different things like group your accounts so that maybe you want to group them by business unit or any other kind of specific predefined grouping. Along with that, as you see highlighted in the middle of the page, you have 2 buttons which say make a payment and transfer funds. And for most users, if you go over to the right-hand side, you can select that little navigator bar, and that actually expands all of the functionality that's available within cash balances. And what we specifically have highlighted for the point of today's conversation is the bank account transfer and the Ad-Hoc payment functionality. So we'll quickly review those 2 items in a little more detail. First and foremost, we want to talk about bank account transfers. And so the easiest way to think about bank account transfers is it's really a book transfer between any of the 2 accounts your entity has defined within the application. So if you're Elire Inc., you might have multiple external bank relationships, but you have a need to fund across banking structures. And one of the things that we find is that many users, both in Oracle Cloud and other Oracle applications, whether it be PeopleSoft or EBS or even just if we go the software agnostic route in the ERP realm, tend to find a lot of a need or a strong need for these bank account transfer pages. When we're doing so much movement of funds internally, we don't want to take the time, or we don't need to take the time to define all of our beneficiary information. And since these accounts are already defined, then we can take advantage of some of the ERP advantages like reconciling payments, posting accounting to these payments. And so this create bank account transfer page is what really allows us to quickly move money and issue a payment. So if we start over on the top left-hand side of the page, we quickly roll through where you can define the debit and credit bank accounts, items like your payment date, your total payment amount. And then you move over to the right-hand side, and that's where we start to define the payment methods and the payment profiles. And so these are driven by by a separate process that we're going to talk a little bit more about in payables, the payment process profile. And this is where we start to talk about transmission methods and the different types of payments that are available and how the application actually treats the behavior of those payments. And then last but not least, I want to call out the rectangle in the top middle of the page around settle transactions through payments. When we were on the agenda slide a moment ago, we talked about how all of the payments functionality really sits within payables. So even if I'm in cash management and I'm generating a bank account transfer or any kind of ad hoc wire payment or ACH, that will go through an approval process within cash management, and then that will flow over to the payable submodule or the payment submodule that sits within payables. So just wanted to call that out, as this will be a recurring item that you guys see come up through today's presentation. Now that we quickly talked bank account transfers, we want to talk create ad hoc payments. So the theory behind creating an ad hoc payment is I need the ability to essentially be able to pay any beneficiary out there that's not myself. So I need to have the ability to go out and issue a payment from any of my external bank accounts, or so any of my external banks, branches, or accounts that I have defined within the application. And I need to be able to generate a payment file out of the application. And with that, I also need that payment file to go through a series of workflow online. So this page is laid out fairly similar to the bank account transfer page. It just has additional details around the concept of payee, which we touch on the next slide. And payee is essentially a template for ad hoc payments. You know, a lot of us know that we do pay the same reoccurring bills or same reoccurring payments on a monthly basis. You know, whether it be rent or a mortgage, or we're paying the same banks for fees or whatever it might be. All of those payment instructions very rarely change. So we have this concept of payee where we can create a template and quickly grab that from a lookup prompt on the ad hoc payment page and predefine all of my items, excluding payment date and payment amount. And as again, you'll see in the middle of the page, this payment will actually settle and the payment file itself will be generated out of the payment submodule in AP. And last but not least, we will cover the whole process around where once you've actually defined your payment and you've created it online, you need to submit it. And that submit payment actually starts to get itself into the workflow that we'll talk about here in just a moment. Here, as I just introduced, we quickly talk about creating and managing payees and how it's a concept of really templating my ad hoc payments. If I always know that I'm going to be paying a payee like Elire for regular consulting hours, and I don't treat them as a supplier for whatever reason on the payable side, then maybe I will want to go ahead and create a template for them to say, here's all their pertinent beneficiary bank information, and here's what I want to define as far as regular instructions to them. And then here is the Manage Ad Hoc Payments and Bank Account Transfer page. So once we either create a bank account transfer or we create an ad hoc payment, now it's officially in the workflow. So now if myself creates a payment, I need somebody like Kevin to approve that payment, because I shouldn't have the ability to select and approve a payment on my own. So now this payment begins into the workflow, and once somebody like Kevin approves it, it will actually flow over to the payables module. And then that's where that gets us into the whole concept that we're going to introduce next, which is the accounts payable payment submodule. So when we talk payments, I want to introduce similar to what we introduced for the beginning of the cash management payment section. I want to show kind of where the main home page is and where all of this functionality lies, and kind of the different items that we have available to us within this hub. So if you log into Oracle Cloud, much like we did for the cash management cash balances tab, we navigate over to payables, and within payables we find the payment submodule. And here's where I have a number of different items of whether it's tasks, like over on the right hand side, like submitting and creating payment process requests, which we'll get into in a moment, or maybe I need to create a one-off payables payment, which is just like creating an ad hoc payment in cash management. Or if I move over to the left side of the page, maybe I want to see what kind of payments I have in flight. So what are the payments that are in the middle of the workflow but have not yet generated payment files and been dispatched to the bank? Or I might have a payment file queue that requires attention, where when my files are in the process of being processed, they haven't passed validation. Maybe there's a bad record within the file, maybe there's bad data, maybe it's improperly formatted against the templates, and we need to go out and we need to adjust those payments to ensure that they go out the door correctly. Then we also have the other traditional queues that most AP systems have, to where you can quickly identify any kind of stops or holds on payments or on invoices. And then you can also schedule payments, much like putting them onto a batch scheduler, so that these payments can be picked up on a reoccurring window and actually processed out of the application. The last thing I'll call out is also from here, we can start to see some of the accounting that gets called out from the or that gets created from the payments that we're creating, both from payables and from cash. And then the associated recon or associated accounting also rolls us into the whole concept of being able to reconcile our system side transactions against some of the bank statements that we're processing in that we'll talk about towards the end of the webinar. Before we really generate payments, there's a concept called a payment process profile. And what that profile really does is it kind of builds into controls in the overall payments process within Oracle Cloud, and it really tells the application how to handle these payments and a lot of the payment files that are being generated within the process. And so what we mean by that is if we take the screenshot on the page, for example, we have a SEPA payment, and we know SEPA payments only fall within the Eurozone countries, and we're only going to be paying these within euros. So we need to put some stipulations around this payment file format to say, okay, I can only issue this if the debiting account is issuing, or if the debiting account is putting out a total amount in euros, a total currency amount in euros, or possibly we need a lockdown that only specific business units even have the availability to generate a SEPA payment. One concept that's a lot different from all the folks on here that are coming over from PeopleSoft or from EBS is that when you generate a payment out of Oracle Cloud ERP, out of Payables module, that payment is marked as confirmed / acknowledged the second that it's processed and dispatched out to the bank. So that's a little bit different than when a lot of us are used to the concept of being able to dispatch a payment and await an acknowledgement that's sent by the bank and actually consume that acknowledgement and acknowledge these payments so that they're then available for accounting and reconciliation. So we've recognized this with a number of clients, and Elire, as part of our practice, the practice that myself and the practice that Michael Graham runs, have identified some past solutions to get around this as we've started to have clients ask us about, how are there different ways to handle this. Last, before we move on from payment process profiles, I want to talk about, outside of controlling who has access to different payment formats, this also locks down all of the connectivity. So the payments module really functions as a quote-unquote payment hub, and we need to talk about, or we need to control how all of these payments are transmitted to the banks, through what channels and the different protocols available, along with some of the reporting or some of the grouping functionality when we start to getting into the whole batch payments like batch ACHs and things like that. So now that we've essentially generated a payment process profile, and if we go back to what we learned about in cash management, now we could have actually generated a payment out of cash management or generated a payment out of AP, and now it's been approved, we have the final step of actually generating the payment file itself. And so within that payment file, we need to go ahead and set some attributes for scheduling and submitting these overall processes. We need to go in and say, okay, what business units do we want to process on a regular basis? What types of payment files do we want to process? Is there a scheduling window around any of these things? Or is it just kind of wide open and we just want to go out and run this process for absolutely everything that's in the queue and ready to rock and roll? So the payment process request page is kind of that final stop for evaluating and ensuring that payments that have been approved that are ready for dispatch are out there and will be picked up in this process. Last but not least, if we want to talk about some of the overall processing steps that occur during submit and manage payment process requests, we talk about the installment selection, so the invoices and the payments from cash management built correctly for the supplier accounts, where if we're identifying an IBAN for any kind of Western European country, we want to ensure based on SWIFT specs that that IBAN's built correctly and that that's a valid IBAN so that when it goes to the bank, that payment is actually processed and not returned. And at that final step, once all the payments have passed validation, then we actually generate a payment file, and that payment file is now submitted to the bank. We quickly talk payment validations, and here's kind of just an expanded version of the last payment validations that I talked about. And really, there's two different kinds of payment validations, predefined and user-defined. So predefined is like what I introduced. We want to ensure that a payment that we're building or that we're generating out of the application has proper beneficiary instructions that are accurate and correct. or we have user-defined, which you can go to an external account definition within Oracle Cloud and say, hey, I don't want to issue a SEPA payment for anything less than $10 because or 10 euros because it cost me 10 euros to process, so I see no point in generating a payment that I'm going to lose money on, and some things like that. You can also set maximums, and you can also have a concept of $0 payments if you're starting to get around sending tax payments and things like that. One of the related ERP advantages that we recognize across ERPs, both on-prem and cloud, is the whole concept of bank reconciliation. If I'm using if I have a centralized treasury function, and I'm using one ERP instance to handle all of my treasury management core business processes and work items, then I'm generating payments out of the application, I'm consuming prior day bank statements, and then I have the ability to run reconciliation on a daily basis, both at the sub-ledger or at the sub-module. So I can run cash management reconciliation, I can run AP reconciliation, I can run AR reconciliation, or I can even run payroll recon now. So this is kind of one of the big realized gains where can be fully automated, run on a daily basis, and actually generate automated accounting as well, which that segues us kind of into this last slide to say, here's where we can start to talk accounting and say that once I issue a payment out of the application, I can now post the debit side to my cash account, post a credit off to a suspense or a cash clearing account, and then once my payment's reconciled, I can generate the other side of the accounting to then be flat and be in balance between all my accounts, and do this through an automated fashion, which we see as a high value add. And that segues us into the second poll question.
Perfect, thanks, Logan. Poll question number 2 should be kicked off. What types of disbursement payment formats does your organization utilize today? So you can select all that apply. One or more of the following is NACHA, ISO 20022, SWIFT format, EDI 820, or checks. Again, please understand that it's likely some combination of these. It looks like some folks are responding. Thank you for that. If you haven't gotten it in yet, can you please respond? Give it one more minute. And good to go. All right, we'll close it up. And to no one's surprise, everybody is utilizing checks, obviously. And NACHA looks like it's also a large utilization factor too. So with that, Logan, we'll go back to the
Thanks, Kevin.
slides.
So to wrap up the functional portion of today's webinar, we want to talk high level about some of the setup and configuration considerations when we're talking about standing up treasury and cash management as a whole for the first time within the application. First and foremost, we can't do anything as far as payments or forecasting or reconciliation or accounting within the application without doing the core required config, which that's all around defining our banks, branches, and our external accounts that we hold outside of our entities' doors. So up on the screen right now, we have the definition around external accounts within Cloud Cash Management. And I specifically want to call out a few items here that are controlled at the bank account level. And first, that's the account use. So am I going to use this account for payables, or am I going to use it for payroll or receivables? One thing that we've been asked a lot about is that you don't see cash management in this section. Since so much of the cash management functionality kind of sits or is integrated or linked in some way or fashion to payables, if you check payables, you've also made that account now eligible for anything over on the cash management side, whether it's showing up in lookup prompts on the page, or whether you're trying to consume bank statements or disburse payments, anything like that. This is also where the linkage between the external account and the GL chart field strings is built at, so we can define items like, here's the cash account that's going to get hit when we're doing our automated accounting from the subledger, and how we actually control where this debit and or credits post to. We also have the cash clearing and or suspense account, and then we also have any kind of reconciliation differences that we're realizing during the auto recon process. A moment ago, we talked about some of the validations and the user-defined validations around payments. And on the bottom of the page, that's where that's actually called out in the payables control, where we say, are we going to allow $0 payments to go out of this account? Do we have some kind of minimum or maximum for total dollar amount payments for any single total dollar amount on a payment, and then do we also have any kind of maximum outlay for that? One concept that's actually newer to Cloud ERP that wasn't delivered out of the box in a lot of on-prem applications was the ability to control security at the bank account level. So what used to occur is that if you had access to a business unit and that business unit is linked to the external account definition, if you had access to that business unit, you could see any predefined or any defined external accounts linked to that BU. So now what Oracle's done is recognize that if you have access to a business unit, you could be an AP team or you could be a treasury team, and you don't necessarily need to see each other's accounts. So now we can lock down bank accounts at the account level by users and roles, and so we can assign Kevin at the AP account, and we can assign Logan the cash management account, and we don't see each other's accounts in any kind of reconciliation prompts, or they're not even eligible for us online to do things like payments either. And so this has been one big value add, especially as organizations try to keep track of things like their bank access and some of the users on the account. If they keep these up to date, then it's very easy to be able to track that. Since we've talked all things payments today, we want to quickly talk about the supported types and formats that Oracle Cloud delivers as far as seeded types and formats. And so we have the pretty traditional payment types that are seeded and delivered out of the box. We have the traditional wires, ACHs, EFTs, checks. I don't think too many of us pay via PayPal these days when it comes to treasury or AP payment functionality, but that is available. And then last, we talk about a lot of the configurable payment formats. And so we have the traditional SWIFT messages if we're generating MT101s, 103s. A lot of the world's going standard in the ISO department, so ISO 20022, and using those to generate things, payments like SEPA or BACS, or even urgent or non-urgent payments depending on where we're going. We still have EDI in place, and then we can generate checks in a multitude of ways, whether we're talking about issuing checks right out of the application as far as an electronic check, or if we're trying to generate an electronic file that we send to a print vendor, we still have that ability. For us that have been around these applications for a long time, we understand that the seeded formats don't always work. And what we mean by that is every bank in the world might say that there's an ISO standard, but every bank has some slight variance to an XML tag or the length of a field or the placement of fields, whatever it might be. So for Oracle delivered us the ability through Oracle's BI tool, Business Intelligence Publisher, to go out and look at a payment template and then modify it online. So this, granted this is done and spoken about during a functional webinar, this is still a fairly complex process and does require some technical involvement when it gets us into building XML files and doing things like that. And then last but not least, we want to talk about payments integration and transmission. The concept we talked about today, that essentially all payments sit within Oracle AP and within the payment submodule, I like to think about that as a little bit of, essentially a payments hub where we interface in from every submodule, or we can also have an integration in from an outside application. We can funnel all of that into the payment submodule, and through varying protocols, we can transmit those out to the banks. And through those same transmission channels, we can also receive bank statements and other electronic files from our bank partners. So with that, we've got our third and final question.
Perfect. Thanks, Logan. Final question today. At what frequency does your organization currently reconcile payments? You select one of the following: daily, weekly, monthly, or another frequency. So we've got some folks that are already answering. Thank you so much. We get everybody else that's on engaged with the full question. Be much appreciated. It's a little over half. Still coming in. And we can close it out. So pretty standard what we see very consistently at the organizations we work with on a daily basis, but certainly know that there is differences between organizations. With that, we'll quickly run through the last couple of slides here. We just want to talk a little bit more about some of the high-level details of the methodology behind our cloud implementation approach. Really, Elire, being in business for 12 years, we also leverage the knowledge and experience of many members of our leadership, which they've been in the Oracle, ERP, and Treasury space in particular for over 20 years, really. So lots of tried and true approach as we built out this methodology for the new world of implementing cloud technologies. I think really the main thing to take away here is we can help you from the beginning to the end, including ensuring that everything is stabilized once go live is complete. You can feel rest assured that this methodology will be one that ensures success. Specifically around the offerings, as your organization is getting ready to make the move to the cloud, we do offer a short engagement, a readiness assessment is what we call it, to determine whether or not your organization is truly prepared for it. So, you know, a lot of people might have an answer to that question if asked, but this readiness assessment can help you ask a little bit more targeted questions in a facilitated manner to put data behind that actual answers, to fully understand what will it take for us to get ready if we're not, what are we doing well today that we need to continue to focus on, and how can we improve. Along the same lines, obviously, we've talked a lot about our ability and a lot of experience implementing treasury management solutions and Oracle products in general. We have the methodology really that can help ensure that that's done successfully. And the final thing that really rounds out our offerings as an Oracle partner is our ability to enhance these apps. We understand that today, you know, some of the non-delivered cloud functionality just won't fit exactly as needed, but we can work with you to understand whether that's a system change or more likely a business process change. And with that, we've got 2 questions here that we are a couple minutes over. If everybody can kind of hang just for a little bit longer here, we've got actually, looks like 2 of the similar types of questions. So maybe I can just summarize it as one question. Looks like you're pulling it up. So during the implementations, is there a need to modify the delivered payment file format?
So I think we talked lightly about that here towards the end of the functional section before we did the last poll question. And short answer, yes. Through the BI Publisher tool, we have the ability to modify seeded formats, create net new formats, and we can apply multiple versions of those because we know that many banks might not all accept the same format, so we need the ability to be able to call all of those and generate all those different payment files.
And the last slide here to wrap it up. Thanks so much for everybody hanging on. The final in the 5-part series, Extending Cash Forecasting with the Oracle Smart View. That'll be January 16th of 2018 with the presenter Tony Barbato presenting. Thanks so much again. Really appreciate everyone's time. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out directly to Elire at sales@elire.com, or if you'd like to set up a discussion to speak directly with Logan about some of your questions, feel free to reach out to us. Once again, thanks everyone for taking the time to attend, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.